who haven't joined us yet for this. Oh, hello, good morning. Go ahead, Dina.
Okay, hello everybody in Facebook world. Thank you for joining us today. We're so excited to have you here at the Central Village gathering. Today we're talking about an extremely exciting topic of creativity and tapping into this in motherhood. And so before we get started, I'm just going to go over our fourth trimester gathering code of conduct. We hold this space as a space to be kind and courteous to one another. It's not a space to judge. We're going to be sharing and working through our own creativity in our own manner today. And so opening and holding space for one another and honoring each other's journeys is extremely important. There's no hate speech or bullying that's allowed. And we ask that you give more than you take when you join these meetings. This is a space to connect and fill your soul and be in a gathering within a village of fellow mamas and caregivers. So please give more than you take and respect everyone's privacy. And again, no medical advice. Okay. So today is super exciting because we have our Moon Muse, Keeley Bruner, here with us today. And I'm so excited because everybody has said amazing things, Keeley, about you and the work that you do in these villages and how you facilitate an opportunity for a deep dive into our own souls, right? Our own creativity and really communicating what we're experiencing and going through in beautiful ways. So I'm extremely excited to learn from you today and practice what we learn. Keeley is a mother of 3 and a DONA Certified Postpartum Doula. She loves creating and expressing herself through writing, music, and needlework, and is an avid reader of just about anything. She has been leading quarterly creative gatherings for fourth trimester for the past year, and she loves helping people find and share their spark. And so, Keeley, thank you so much for joining us. We'll let you go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thanks, Dina. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and it's going to be this one. And I'll go to slideshow. So, is that good? Everybody follow me? Yep. Excellent. So just as a little bit of a disclaimer, several of you have attended before, or maybe you attended the fourth trimester presentation of the annual conference. And I normally begin in a certain way with a certain, slideshow of, possible ways to think about creativity. Maybe you respond to it in different ways. I have retooled it a little bit, and so it's a little more interactive, and it feels like that will be a good format for this group. So we will get started. So let's introduce ourselves. This is something that we haven't done in past times. I don't always know where people are, like, oh, did you just have a baby, or are you, and so we have already covered that. And I just wanted to get an idea of where people were, and that's helpful. So for people on Facebook, we have, I think among us, children from age 2 to 15, it sounds like, and then also a daughter graduating college today. So we're kind of running the gamut a little bit. And then how do you like to express creativity? I think this was something we sort of talked about in our intro, but not to a great degree. So if you'd like to share, I'd love to hear.
I know for me, when I actually make the time for it, I love writing poetry. It's something I did when I was a little girl, and I did throughout high school and college. And then when life got busy, it was the first thing that fell to the side, and I stopped doing it. And probably about maybe in February of this year, I tuned back into myself and created a space to write my first poem in years. And it felt so good. And I feel like writing is really my outlet.
That's excellent. I love that.
So I really enjoy pigment and color and So on the walls behind me, those 3 smaller paintings, those are crayon, melted crayon, which I saw on Facebook one time as a, you know, what can you do with your kids with stuff you have lying around your house, and a
Yeah.
hair dryer and a vegetable peeler and
Oh, I love it.
a zester, like you would zest the peel on a
Mhm.
lime. Was just really fun. So I like to try out new ways to play with color and pigments, and new
That's
mediums.
fantastic. So creative. I love it.
Yeah, and Keeley, I was sharing that, yeah, I like to write free verse, particularly as a way to process emotion. I don't do very well with journaling, but I think when I write poetry, things come out, and maybe they come out a little bit deeper than I would feel okay writing
Mhm.
if it wasn't poetry. So that's and I like doing other stuff too, but it feels like that's the most accessible to me.
Yeah, so I think what we're seeing is sometimes a couple of things, which this is something I've covered in the previous sessions we've had, is when we become parents, we become caregivers. Um, our personal creative practice, if we had one to start with, is often one of the first things to go by the wayside. So that's kind of the purpose of these gatherings, and you're exactly the sort of people I had in mind when I was, planning this kind of thing, because it's me too. And only in the past few years have I gotten any type of creative practice that you would call something besides just here or there. And so, yeah, I my kind of chosen medium as well as writing. And I think that's partly because you have everything you kind of need for it. If you have a computer or you have paper and pencil, pen, whatever. And I do find that I'm an external processor. So I may not even realize that I'm feeling something until I begin to write about it or talk to someone about it. All, all the people who I've met here basically have been recipients of those external processing bits that I've done, and so I appreciate that, and I'm grateful for my friends who can hold space for that. But it's awfully nice to have a creative practice as well that's kind of in place when you get overwhelmed, much as I did just yesterday, as a matter of fact. But moving on to another question. How do you feel when you get a creative idea?
For me, I think, okay. For me, I think this is like the most challenging piece of being a mom is that I have a ton of creative ideas all the time. And I feel that if I don't catch it in that moment and do something with it, it's going to disappear. So oftentimes it's like this very like exciting moment of, oh my gosh, I have to paint that or I have to write that. But like right now I'm nursing a toddler, so I can't really paint. And so I end up feeling kind of frustrated. And then when I get the time to do it, I think because of the frustration and because the idea is halfway gone, then it's like really disappointing to not fulfill that or follow that through.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Maria. I can identify with that for sure.
I was going to say almost the exact same thing. So I resonate a lot with that feeling for sure.
Yeah. I'll share one little bit here. I've always considered myself a fairly creative person. I did music growing up and in college too. And so sometimes if I see people on Facebook, for instance, who are very creative and they're doing these things, and I think to myself, I should be doing that too. And so it doesn't feel affirming or validating or encouraging to me necessarily, even when I see these other people being creative. It just feels like a kind of a shameful feeling, and it feels like like I'm insufficient. And so that's how I have felt, and I still do sometimes, but because I have something in place now to receive the ideas I do have, I can look back over that and see like, no, but you have ideas, and you have things that you've created and done. And I mean, it's kind of funny to talk about not feeling creative when you have children, because like, what is more creative act, than growing and either adopting or birthing children. I mean, it's like, it doesn't really get more creative than that. And so it's kind of weird that we should feel we have to live up to some type of, image. And I think that, yeah, there's just so many ways to be creative. And so when I see someone else doing it in a way that I'm not, sometimes it's easy to be judgmental. So that's kind of what I want to talk about in this, and what I have covered in the past. But I want to be sure that I let everybody get a chance. Anybody have anything else they want to share about when you get creative ideas or see other people being creative?
I love what you pointed out, Keeley, and I feel like I've struggled with that my whole life. I've been surrounded by friends who I would define as creative because they can make beautiful things. And when you can make beautiful things with your hands or as artwork or on the computer, and it just comes in naturally to you, or you can design a room and it feels beautiful to walk into, like that was my narrow definition of creativity. And I battle with that narrow definition regularly because I'll feel like an intruder, right? Like, oh, I'm creative. I am creative. I'm creative with words, right? I'm creative with education, with business plans and ideas, and different way, right? It's a very different type of creativity, but I wouldn't have called myself creative until probably the beginning of 2021. Like just recently, I would label myself that way and accept that definition, which became really like freeing, like liberating.
Yep. A lot of it is just living into it, just allowing yourself to kind of take on that identity and then say, hey, if I were a creative person, what would I do? What would I think about this? And then realize that like, oh, I already am, because we really are. I'll just give a really silly example. I was cleaning the bathroom a couple weeks ago, and I'm always irritated because the back of the toilet gets dusty, but it's not like dirty. Okay, but I use Clorox wipes because I'm lazy, and so you put it on the back of there, and it just makes like a mess, and you're like, why? So what I started doing, I keep an extra roll of toilet paper there. So now I just dust that off with the toilet paper before I use the wipe on the toilet. And I'm like, hey, that's such a creative thing to do that I did, And then also in between the faucets and the backsplash, there's this little spot that's very hard to get with the aforementioned Clorox wipes. So I grab my toothbrush and I just use the handle of it to just get it in between there. I started doing that a couple weeks ago. And it was really empowering to just kind of say like, hey, I had an idea of a way to fix this. And you could not submit that to a journal and nobody's going to give you a Pulitzer, but like, does it make your life easier? Does it make you feel, some type of way empowered, and like, yes, it does. So it may not sound like a lot, but when you think about that, and then you think about, oh, how do I get my 2-3-year-old to use the bathroom? How do I get my 6-year-old to eat the dinner in the allotted time that we all ate, which is never going to happen, but I can try, how do I get, these other things to kind of cohere as a family unit? That's all part of what we do every single day. And because we don't call it creativity, we don't always see it as worthy, of our time and energy, but it definitely takes up our time and energy. So I think just a lot of it's just nomenclature, isn't it? Just naming what was already there and living into it. So that's more or less what I like to cover at the beginning of these. All right. So what are some ways you recognize creativity in your daily rhythm? So I just gave a couple of examples, really small, simple ones. But what, I'm curious, does anybody have anything to share that you've recognized?
I have one actually that I'm just realizing now is part of where I live into that creativity is around when there's a new medication, it has to be given at night instead of in the morning. and a kid can't swallow pills. And so I'm forever begging for, okay, give me a tablet I can crush, a capsule I can open,
Right.
something that comes orally, right? So there's those conversations to get the kind of substance that I can use. But then there's also the, what am I going to put it on that my kid's going to agree to put in their mouth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the latest is that there has to be a difference between the morning meds and the night meds. And the morning meds have forever been on Nutella for forever.
Uh-huh.
And so night meds can't, like, no. So they're on strawberry Greek yogurt because that was what she picked on. I'm like,
That's great.
excellent.
I
So
love it.
yeah.
It's problem solving. It's creative. It's excellent. I love it.
For me, I've realized the more I practice being instead of doing, the more I'm able to tap into creativity instead of reaction. And so that's been a part of my daily rhythm, is being able to be present and recognize the small moments. And when I do that and I ground myself in those moments, I'm more open to problem solving through the day in a creative way, rather than being rigid or structured or resistant to something interfering with my day. And so that's a rhythm that I've been intentionally building into my days, is being rather than doing.
I like that. That's really good. That's so good to remember. And I don't think there's a time of life that it doesn't apply, but especially right now. Anybody else want to share about that?
For me, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I feel like there's like this constant creative practice with my almost 2-year-old of like trying to find these creative ways to get him to do what I need him to do, while thinking that it's his idea. And it is sometimes just really frustrating, as I'm sure many of you can relate, but there are these moments where if I can kind of think of it as this game, it's actually kind of fun. Like, how can I find a choice for him in a situation where there's really not a choice? Like, this is what we're going to do, or
Right.
like, how can I don't know. It has, when I've started to kind of frame it that way for myself, or see it as something that I'm sort of finding a creative way to help him feel that he has agency. It actually is kind of fun. I get kind of energized by it. So not all the time,
Yeah,
but
for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I was going to say, for me, sometimes finding a new way to do something that I thought was hard in the past, or being open to doing something I thought was hard in the past, feels creative. So like last night, like my kids, we needed to go to Costco. We didn't go over the weekend, right? Like we really needed to go. And I'm like, oh, we got like an hour before bedtime. Like, what are we going to do? And in past experiences, Costco has not been an easy place to take my 2 kids. And I was like, okay, we're going to try this. We're going to have fun. And here are the rules. And it went fine. And it felt like, wow, like you went outside of the box of, this is going to be hard, and you did it. Right.
Because they also notice your energy. I mean, I think that that's a huge part of it is, I think in some ways, my kids, they're creative. They just are, especially my daughters. And I mean, my son is 2, he's 3 years old. And so it's like, in a less really kind of tangible way. And I take my cue from them just like they take it from me, and I think that that's part of what has kind of led me into this practice to a greater degree, is because they are so free and empowered, when they just, I mean, right now it's, we've gone through duct tape, we've gone through hot glue. Now it's just like dioramas is the thing right now. And so I don't know, I'm not going to make a diorama, but like, it's really cool. And the creative energy is still in our space, and I'm still benefiting, I feel like, from it. If I allow myself, again, like Dina said, to allow yourself to be, rather than just, having this list of expectations and so forth. So I really love that, Jenny, kind of setting that tone. How do you feel when you catch yourself being creative? I think that we talked about that a little bit already. I just wanted to be sure that the point is that you're already, I think that it's easy to come to, something like this and feel like, or maybe skip it because you don't feel like you're a creative person, and I think that we don't have to be, sitting down and working on a novel or something, which is like amazing if you are, but that's not a thing that you have to be doing to call yourself creative. You don't have to be part of a musical band or whatever it happens to be that you think of. And those are certainly goals that you can have, but let's think about the fact that even in our daily rhythms, we have ingenuity. So this is a slightly different question. Do you have ways of inviting the creative impulse into your life? Like, what works for you? Because it may work for another one of us.
So this Kate again, it's interesting because particularly as we've been stuck in COVID at home, no restaurants, no, like it's this, okay, rinse, wash, repeat, which order does it go, and what foods do we have, and what do we eat? And it's always, it's so easy to get into a rut of the same meals and etc. So I'm tired of living in the same old, right? Like we all are. And so what I've noticed is that I'm starting to use the air fryer in the kitchen. I'm like, I wonder what it would be like if I cooked eggplant in the air fryer. Let's just give that a shot. And then I'm like, look at me. It's the best thing ever. So it's, right. It's like this new cool tool that I've been sitting in my kitchen for years, but
it's a great idea. I love that. And somewhat relatedly, I'll just toss this in. We've done roasted broccoli for years where you just put it in at like 400 and toss it after 10 minutes. You just do like olive oil, salt, and pepper. And I tried it with cabbage the other week and it was every bit as good. It was really delicious. You just slice it up. And heretofore in my life, if you asked me to use a cabbage, number one, it would take me a month. And then number two would probably be slaw, just because like that's what I grew up having, which is amazing. And I love, slaw is fine. Steamed cabbage has its place. I'm not a fan. So, roasted cabbage, there it is. Bet you could do it with just about anything. Tips.
I love it. So something that I do to invite the creative impulse into my life is it's how I start my day. So I've realized how I start my day is how I live my day. And if I start my day panicked and rushed without intention, my whole day is like, wah, and I never come down from it. And I've just about my cycle and who I am as a human. And so I've started my days really intentionally, like setting my alarm way before my son's going to even open his eyes. So I have time to journal. So I have time to do my meditation practices and just tap into myself. And then when I do that, like it just comes flowing in. Like I know what I want to do for that day. I know the order that I want to go in. I know what matters. There's an intention that I set for my day. And then the rest of the day feels so much better. So when I intentionally set my day up to start well, the rest of my day can flow and I can be more easily.
Yep. I 100% agree. So I am sure that, so I'm not as familiar with how these slides are. We do get to that in my ordinary rhythm of, it's funny because I feel like everybody I know is like, she's going to talk about morning pages again. She's going to bring it up. It's going to be morning pages. It's like Keeley bingo. But that's how I learned from The Artist Way by Julia Cameron is the way that I practice morning pages. I don't do it for 30 minutes because I don't have 30 minutes, but I have 20. So that's what I do. And also that just happens to be like a front and back of a journal page, which is about how long I found that I need to just kind of part of it's organizing my day, but part of it's just getting everything out on the page, because if I come out and my head is a swirl, it's just I'm so much less able to, you know, operate just in any capacity. So I find that it's a great place for receiving you know, creative impulse, but it's also really great for just letting the things settle and kind of organizing the things in my brain so that I know that, okay, I know all that's in there. Now I know where it is and I can find it later whenever I got to do that task, you know. But like, just because our heads are so full of so many different things, it's very much like a computer with umpteen tabs open, you know, that's just any given time. I heard several of us, even in the intro, you know, talk about, well, today I'm here in this capacity, but, you know, and we probably, if we listed among us, there'd have to be, you know, 50, 60 different things that we are, you know, and jobs that we serve. And so it's useful even just to have, yeah, during postpartum, it was more like a 10-minute practice that I did, you know, with my son, but I tried to get back to it as soon as I could. And I have some really precious stuff as a result of that. And it's a really small notebook, but it's really meaningful because just taking, a few minutes to kind of let things settle and organize in your head. I think it's a way of helping our subconscious organize those things because there's times in our life, maybe like now, that it needs some help. So I wrote a little poem about the muse. I'll share this with you. Sometimes the muse comes in the light of a full moon, during a candlelit bath, or while meditating in a silk robe, or while reading some rare esoteric wisdom and sipping fine tea. Then again, sometimes sleep cruelly elbows her out of the way, and you fall asleep 3 different times during the 2 hours before bedtime. The muse doesn't wait until everyone is potty trained, or until everyone can brush their own hair, brush their own teeth, dress themselves, remember their shoes and their bags and their books, or until everyone knows how to stay in their damn beds after bedtime. She doesn't wait until all the dishes are done, the floors are clean, the clothes are folded, all the clutter is tidied. But she will sneak in while you chop onions, or wipe bottoms, or braid hair, while you drive to school, or perhaps on the way back home in silence, or in a car full of singing and screaming. She will tap your shoulder as you lie in bed those first or last 5 minutes of the day that you are conscious, or while you are nursing, feeling full and grateful, and wondering how it will all get done again tomorrow. So I think that that's just kind of commensurate with a lot of our everyday rhythms. It's not always going to happen when you need it or want it, but it's going to show up. And like Maria said, you know, sometimes it's a good moment and sometimes not. But if you have a little place to receive those impulses, it's, you know, sometimes a little easier to process it.
That was so beautiful. So well said. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Actually, so I wrote it because of a prompt I was given from Maria's creative journal that she's put together. So I'll let her type it in the chat box if she wants to type her website. You can look up her journal, which is really helpful. So what do you think? Can you recognize this muse?
100%. 100%. How is this going to happen all over again? You know, in the next 5 minutes, much less the next day. 100%.
Yep. That first stanza, by the way, is 100% my regular life that did occur to me because it was a full moon and I said, I'm going to do this and I've got this. And you know, the kids were all in bed and I said, I'm going to take a bath. And I fell asleep. Then I tried to meditate. I was doing this guided meditation with a friend of mine and I fell asleep. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to read this book then. And I fell asleep and then it was bedtime. And I was like, well, I guess I'll just go back to sleep. So some days they're just like that, you know, that's what we have to get. So we're going to try out some 100-word pieces or short sketches, because during this time of life, sometimes we just need to create boundaries within which we can operate, because we, a lot of the time, I don't know if you guys feel this way, I'm getting the feeling you probably do, we don't feel like we have the time and energy to put towards a creative practice. We think, nah, I'm not going to have time because I'd have to get up at 5, or I'd have to get up at 4, I'd have to do it after bedtime. And by that time, I'm exhausted because I've just been doing all this stuff all day. So 100-word pieces are nice because you can probably jot it out. The ones I've done before, if I just kind of free write the way that Jenny mentioned, I have to cut it down. And that's actually kind of fun, because it's like, okay, what words do I really want to say about this image or about this experience? And that in itself is kind of cool, because then you don't feel like it's sort of the difference between, and I've really resonated with this idea in the past, of the sky being the limit. That feels to me just overwhelming, thinking like, oh my gosh, I could write like this huge novel, or I could compose a symphony or something. Like, if you asked me to even begin doing that, I don't know that I could even have the energy to try, just because the end product feels so out of reach. But if you think about the infinity between 0 and 1, for instance, that's a concept I can resonate more with, because limits are a necessary part of my life right now. And I think we can identify with that, as parents and so forth. So since our lives give us by necessity limited time and energy to ourselves, why not choose some limitations consciously and see if we can have fun? So here's one little guy I came up with a couple years ago, I think. Dressing, brushing, zipping, buckling, how they drain creativity. Like water, it slips through my hands. Where is the time or energy to harness it? Nevertheless, my life demands innovation, memory, intelligence. Finding a dozen ways to get a toddler to eat, shepherding 3 children through the public library, constructing 2 dinners for a family of 5 using 2 eggplants, a bag of spinach, a cup of cornmeal. Every day is a tapestry of micro decisions, a workshop for solving broken sleep or a prickly attitude. Daily masterpieces of laughter over dinner, unprompted gratitude, suffocating hugs and wet kisses. These are my medium. So that was one that was much longer before, and it was kind of neat to, if it sounds a little choppy, it's because it's 100 words, but that's, I think, a good kind of reflection of our lives right now in some ways. So I believe the next thing, and this is something I did at the 4th trimester conference as well. And it felt like, because it's about half as long as these sessions, there wasn't so much time to do it and then to share. So I'm going to ask you guys to choose an image from your parenting or caregiving journey and free write 100 words or so about it, knowing this last page is 100 words. You can, obviously, we're not going to count them. I'm not going to hold you to it, or do a short sketch. If you happen to be an artist, my husband is a visual artist, and so he does these little sketches of people, if he's at a meeting or something, so he gets bored and he sketches the people on their Zoom, picture, and I think that's clever. So we'll take about 5 minutes and see what we come up with. There is this link down here, which I wasn't gonna click, but I did. Anyway, I'm gonna probably just try to send you this, put it in the chat box, because that way you can play it on your own computer. This is Lumen. Pause it. All right, and that way it's not like you have to listen to this, but it's something that you can do if you want. Now I'm trying to figure out how to get over to that. All right, and I'll put there. That's the music that I have to kind of listen to while you're thinking of this. And I'm gonna stop my share so I can let you guys do that. And I'll turn on my video and stop blabbering. I'll be back in about 5 minutes. Oh, and this might be a good time to get off the Thanks,
Yeah.
Tina.
Okay, thank you everybody in Facebook world for joining us. Feel free as we stop this to use this time to do your creative practice and write your 100-word poem yourself. And then we will see you next time. Thank you, everybody.